He made leather bags for fun, only to grow it into a 100 crore business called Hyde Design. He has a PhD in international affairs from Princeton, but prefers to figure out how to use vegetable dyes on leather instead. Let's meet Dilip Kapur, founder-president Hyde Design, in his verdant factory in Puducherry. Welcome to the show, Dilip.
Thank you.
Hyde Design went international some 35 years ago. How would you define the Hyde Design brand?
Well, it's always had certain core values. I would say the most important core values would be that it's always been very natural and very ecological. The second thing would be that it's always been concentrated on craftsmanship. It's always believed that human hands, let's say, have soul. That when
so it's not assembly line?
It's not. I hate assembly line. You know, mass manufacturing and assembly line are like opposite ends for us.
So on a bag, how many hands would have worked?
As few as possible. I mean, see, we would start out with one person cuts, then somebody checks it, and then afterwards the assembling is just a small group. We want the small group of 3 or 4 people to make the whole bag. We will not break it up and do assembly line. And the last thing is, it's really based on innovation. Innovation is at the heart of Hyde Design. It's continuous. It's not a brand that follows what happens in Europe or what happens in America or what happens. You know, Hyde Design has clearly its own image and is led by design and innovation.
Yeah, talking about design, see, India's always had its own traditional craft, leather craft, and very well defined, diverse leather craft. Now, I think what your major contribution has been to use indigenous material, indigenous talent, yet give it your own Dilip Kapur signature. And that has obviously worked internationally. Now, what exactly is that Dilip Kapur signature?
I think what makes us different is that we always think of, you know, we're not looking at Europe or looking at America or looking at Japan. We're looking at ourselves all the time. We're looking at our own people, our own customers, our own clients, and how they live and what is their lifestyle.
But Dilip, when you started out, you didn't have any Indian customers, so to say. So what was the design sensibility at that time?
At that time, it was inspired by the fact that I just come back from America, having been a hippie and a radical.
Yeah.
And it was a rebellion against what was common at that time. And everybody at that time liked really plastic, normal stuff, you know, very mass manufactured, very flat. And so we started with things that were very natural, absolute opposite. You know, so our leathers looked really raw and natural, and people would say rough. But we loved it. People loved electroplated buckles, and we started with using solid brass. You know, people were using all polyester, and we were using all cotton linings.
Right.
So we were, you know, we were really rebelling against, I would say, the uniformity and the mass manufacturedness of the product that was there, and we were giving something which was handcrafted individually. Even if it was rough, it was more real, it was more natural.
And would you be at that time consciously also trying to marry this rebellion with the traditional leather crafting that was endemic?
I think what we did was, what we loved in India at that time wasn't a style thing, it wasn't a design thing, it was more the fact that we were able to...
For instance, you have this in Rajasthan, very typical Rajasthani leather work. You have this in Kolhapur, you have it in Madhya Pradesh, you have it down south, very typical traditional stuff. So did you ever try to marry that, or this was just totally off the cuff?
No, I did not, because I think Hyde Design has always been, even when it does it for the Indian market, it's very international in his mind.
Yeah.
But it comes from the fact that Indians themselves have become very international.
Right. So what you were doing, correct me if I'm wrong, was that you were using the the most traditional part of the leather was the way it was treated. That was the traditional input as far as your final product was concerned.
Right. For that we went all the way back.
Yes.
We loved it. We loved the vegetable tanning. It fitted with our own belief in ecology and naturalness.
Yeah.
And we didn't like the chemical tanning. And I also didn't like the fact that it was very unhealthy. It's not good for your skin, chrome, you know.
Why is that?
Well, chrome is a carcinogenic. So it's chrome tan. Normal leather is chrome tanned.
Okay.
So, so we were very conscious of that. I think the second thing that you forget is that our design has always been very influenced by the great skills that Indians have, the hand skills. Whereas, modern bags abroad in China are influenced by machinery, by the fact that they're mostly machine made. So, how to click it easily, how to cut it easily, how to stitch it easily, how to mass manufacture it easily. Whereas ours are more influenced by the skills that people have, how you can cut by hand, how you can hand stitch something, how you can glue it together by hand. So those are all qualities that we really use to enhance the product, to make it more special, more different from other people.
We are now in the cutting section of the high design factory. Dilip, tell us how the leather gets assembled here and finally becomes a bag.
What you're seeing here is that these leathers that we have are totally natural. So cutting them by machine is easy, but it doesn't really manage to look at the different sides of the leather. So what you end up doing is you need people like her, which have fantastic skills. They can cut with a tiny tip of this knife. So she's been working, cut by it. She's been working with us for at least 20 years. Most of our cutters, they have huge skills. And this is a skill that was a traditional skill, but which you don't really find anymore. In most countries in the West, people can't cut with knives anymore.
Okay.
After cutting, it'll come over to a checker. Now, once again, because the leathers are so natural that we don't use leathers with a lot of paint and all that. Every single bag has to be individually matched. That's what she's doing. So this is bag number 82.
Okay.
But you cannot take a bag, piece from 82, match it to bag number 83.
Right.
Because what she's done is now she's taken these two pieces and matched them perfectly together. So she will check every piece for defects, for the matching of the leather, and then she'll number them. And once it's numbered, little bundles, and then moves upstairs to where we make the bags.
We are now in the section of the factory where the bags are assembled. So Dilip, just tell us how this happens.
These are somewhat special bags because these are a mix of a mat and leather. This is all leather. And Vimla, who's in charge of this section, she's assembling these bags. So what she's done is now she's created the outer shell. Then she's created the lining that goes inside separately.
It's a multicolored lining.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
And then she'll put this inside like this. You can see. She'll put the lining inside. This will go inside.
So does this also have a sling after this?
It will have these. So these are the straps. So then after she's done that, she will attach this strap here and this strap here.
And what about this?
This is the final bag.
Oh, okay, okay. And what is that? Okay, this is tight.
This is what we put inside.
All right, and this is how. What does it look like finally?
It'll look like this. The bag will look like this, and you will have a long strap, and this is what pulls the thing together and closes it.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
These are special machines that can stitch the final part of the bag when you assemble the bag. It's quite complicated. So you can see the bag that you saw being glued together there. Then she will now, after that girl has done her job, she will now show us how to do the stitching. Now this is a very skilled job. It's not an easy job what she's doing. So what she's doing is, you know, what she had glued together, she is stitching it so that it becomes permanent now. On this piece, she has embossed on plain leather, she has embossed the logo, High Design's horn logo. So we, after cutting, after checking, we will do this embossing of the brand names on it, and then it goes for assembling.
Right. So when you go on the drawing board to design a bag, what is the creative process that you go through?
I think the first thing we look at is how is, I would look at our consumer's life, and you know, the life of a consumer changes all the time. You know, it's constantly changing. People have become more casual recently. They're not as formal. So the bags we design would be more casual, you know, in that sense. The second thing I would look at is, it could be anything. I could be walking down a street and I would look at I would look at something that had a special shape. It could be a leaf. And then I'll say, wow, isn't that beautiful? And then it would come back, and when I would sit on the drawing board and start drawing, you know, something from the leaf, it could be the color of the leaf, it could be the way the leaf was so uneven, would influence the design process. So I think the design process itself has one little something click that comes, and it comes from anywhere, and it rarely comes when I'm sitting on my desk. You know, very rarely. It comes at any time, and that click gets married to the values of the brand.
So you have some, I think recently you had an icon exhibition where you selected some 11 classic designs. So if I were to ask you what went into the creation of one of those, which one would you pick and would walk me through it?
Well, you could pick my little boxy bag, for example. And the little boxy bag was a really, was a very innovative idea at that time. Because
this was when? When did this happen?
Oh, this happened in 1983 or 84.
Okay.
And it was really funny because we took a suitcase, a large suitcase, and made it tiny like this. But we made it exactly the way the suitcase is made. We didn't change anything. We made it exactly the same. But it was only about this big. And we put a long strap on it. And so the girl could carry it a long way like this, and the little suitcase would be sitting here.
I see. Okay.
So that was, that just came out of something that, don't the old suitcases look beautiful? I don't even, look at your grandmother's cupboard, and she probably still has those old leather suitcases that we used to make.
So where did this idea sort of gel in your head?
I saw a beautiful suitcase.
In your house?
Yeah. I had one. My parents had a beautiful leather suitcase, which had all these things. So from there, I exaggerated the handcraftedness of it a little bit. I put big corners and I put big brass buckle and all that. But it was essentially the same. So, and it won, by the way, that particular bag won the award in UK as the accessory of the year.
Oh, okay.
And Princess Diana gave us the award.
Okay.
And when we celebrated there, and remember at that time there was only one Indian champagne, so we celebrated with Indian champagne, which we carried all the way from here to there. Yeah,
okay.
It was just a bit, it was nice and interesting. First time an Indian had won an award in UK for accessory design.
So now tell us about the time when you decided to have outlets in India. Initially you had a market internationally. It's in fact you've worked in the reverse compared to a lot of people. You said that your first order came from somebody in
from Germany.
So and then you went international. So when did you decide to come to India and market it as a retail product?
Well, remember, it was because the type of designing I was doing was so different from what is normal that people didn't like it in India. People thought it was really weird. It was really strange. It was a very hippie type of product, they thought. So our product was the absolute diametric opposite of that.
Yeah.
So, and it sold mostly in alternative stores where people were, were rebelling against the existing culture. But by the year 2000, remember, India had opened up.
Yes.
Times had changed. We started traveling abroad. So there were people coming back and whose sensibilities had become more international. and they were looking for something different. So we thought, why not sell in India too? So then we went to look for a distributor in India, because internationally we sold always through distributors. But the distributors in India thought our product was really bad. They thought, who wants this? This is really not nice.
What did they think it was?
They thought it's too rough and too natural to them, felt rough. They wanted something which was more polished and flat and nicely painted and more uniform.
Okay.
So we had no choice. So we had to make our own shop. So we made our own shop, and it did incredibly well.
You made your first shop here in Pondicherry?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so in that sense, the consumer had moved on, but the businesses in India hadn't. Business in India was still very traditional.
Right.
So we started opening shops first in places where there were a lot of very international people, tourists and NRIs and people who travel abroad. Pondicherry, Connaught Place in Delhi, Bangalore, the Oberoi in Bombay, so those places. And slowly over time it's just spread everywhere.
Do you think the price tag that you have is economical?
No, we never claim to be economical. I think every product has its own level. Our high design is very aspirational, I would say. But you ask a girl that's just finished her MBA, what is among the first things she wants to buy? And it's usually a high design bag. Because when she goes into an office, she doesn't want to look like she is low end. She wants to look aspirational. So she wants a leather bag. At the same time, she doesn't want to look like a bimbo, so she doesn't want these very bright colors and all that. She wants something that makes her look serious. So it's one of the first things that they do. And I think we're clearly an aspirational brand. We're not at the top end. We're not a 1 lakh rupee bag. So we're not there. That's not what we do. But we're an aspirational brand for people who are traveling abroad, who are educated, who have done professional degrees.
You have said in a couple of your interviews that when you started designing, you didn't care how people would react to it.
Yeah.
However, you've traveled in the last 35 years and you are now actually looking at how consumers could benefit from your bags, and therefore you're looking at what the consumer might want. So how has this transition been, and what has been the thought process?
I think it's a dangerous transition. To me, my mind, it's a very dangerous transition, and it has happened, and you're right. Because when I designed my original bags, it was pure design. I didn't care.
Yes.
When I made the little suitcase, it was so impractical. I never thought anybody would buy it. But I didn't care, and I think that's what made it pure design. Now I actually do, and we always think, doesn't that look practical? Will they not buy it? Oh yeah, they love it.
So why are you thinking like that now?
Because I got more scared, I guess, and because the market is so huge that it's not only the few very design-led people that buy our product, but it's the mainstream market. We are the leader in India. We are a mainstream market. Okay,
how would Dilip Kapur approach the design of a lady's bag versus a gent's bag?
I think men's bags are more functional. Men do think more functional. They want to make sure there's a place for a laptop, place for the iPad. We will always make sure there's there. But I would still, my man's bag will not be a functional, practical only bag. It will still have to make him look, and I think men are very conscious of it, make him look upmarket, make him look like a serious executive and international.
So how would you do that?
I think the product would be very clean. I wouldn't make a lot of jen and all that. So it would be very clean. And besides the other functional things, I think it would be still casual now, because we are a casual brand. So it wouldn't be as formal as some of the other brands would make it. So ours would be a little bit more casual. It would be very clean lines, simple lines, and great material. I think the material itself needs to speak for itself.
And for a woman's bag?
More fashion, more color.
So if it's more fashion, what would you do?
It would be more trendy. It would follow basic trends.
Right now, what's the trend?
Well, for example, the colors. Bright yellow, bright blue are very fashionable now. So we'd make sure that at least 25% of our bags in new bag collection would be in those colors. So that would be one of them, one of the things that we would ensure that we would do. And so other than the colors, I think one of the most important things for women right now, one of the most important trends is we're going back to trends from 1930s and 1960s. Like frame bags, travel bag type thing, and those have become really popular. And I love that because I think that was one of our greatest inspirations even originally. So you'll see a lot of bags that for women now will be with frames, and they're very popular. So women's bags will be far more trendy, 18 months down the road, those trends will be all over, you won't see them at all, they're gone. Whereas men's bags, men's bags go on forever. We can have a man's bag that's been popular, since 1980.
So you've grown from hiring one person to do your bags to now over 3,000, and you have retail outlets in over 20 countries. How do you manage to put all these people together, and how do you work with so many people now?
Well, I mean, increasingly is done by people who have grown up with high design, who are involved in high design. And so, the mentoring itself, I think my most important job is probably now mentoring. So I act as a mentor and I take final decisions. But a lot of the work is, is done beautifully now by people who are outside.
Who have been with you for some time?
Yeah, who've been with me for some time.
Okay. Now you would be having others too to design your bags, and I think you're planning to go into shoes now. Did you have to sort of tutor some of the designers in terms of your sensibilities, or it was something that came naturally to them?
No, you have to clearly tell them what your brand stands for and what you want.
How many designers do you have now?
Well, the two that work with me very closely and who lead the design team, one is Alberto in Milan, who's been working with us for 8 years, and the other one is Fabian in London. And both of these, Fabian works full time with us. And then here we have 5 product designers who work with me.
Okay.
And they're getting better and better. And too, when they're making the first sketches, I would say that's not high design.
How do you know that?
Well, high design stands for, it has a very clear visual language. People who buy high design, they know that's high design.
No, you'll have to tell our audience what exactly a high design bag looks like.
The high design bag will be very clean and simple. It will never be full of this, that, and it will never be chamakdar or glitzy. And I think a lot of Indian designers. But you do have
some bags which have colorful bling.
They have color. Bling. I don't think we have many bags that are bling. There are some bags that are increasingly becoming towards glamour, because we used to make bags that are only day bags. Now we make bags also that go for the evening.
Okay.
But it's still for the same woman. The woman that would buy a bag during the day, she has a need for another bag which is for the evening. So that bag will have more gold on it, for example, or it will be snake skin.
So when you are thinking of getting into shoes, what is the USP there?
Go back to the original. Our shoes are going to be different in the sense that no synthetic, even the lining inside is all leather, and we're going to be very conscious of comfort and health. And the styling will be contemporary but never blingy.
So no pointed shoes?
No pointed shoes, not too pointed. Because we would want anything we make to be still fashionable 18 months down the road.
What's a day in the life of Dilip Kapur?
Okay, what do? It varies somewhat because I still teach in the Oroville school sometimes.
Oh, okay. So what do you teach?
I teach current events to 14 to 16-year-olds.
Oh, wonderful.
So that's one thing.
So that's at what time?
That's at 8:30 in the morning. So before that, when I get up, the first thing I would do is, I guess I would exercise.
Okay.
I think going
You're
up
a
in the
fitness
ashram.
freak.
Well, you can't help it. In the ashram school, you had 7 days a week. You had, phys ed. Never a day off.
So you get up at what time?
I get up around 6:15 or so. So I would do my exercises, and then I would meditate, and then I would have a breakfast with nice Oroville breads and all that in the garden.
Oh, okay.
Then I might go teach, or I will have maybe somebody comes to meet me, because I'm still involved in the community of Oroville.
I see.
So somebody might want to come and meet me about something, some issue or something, discuss that. Then I would come into the office. First thing I would do is go around and say hello to everyone. Then I would have already checked my emails while driving down. So because the driver picks me now, I become lazy again. I used to always come on my bullet. I had a bullet. Now I use
This is going back to your hippie days.
Yeah, but even in Oroville, I still only use my bullet. I never use a car.
Oh, okay.
But to come to work, so I'll have finished my emails in the car itself. So I'll come and start doing that. And then 3 times a week, I'll go into the sampling section to see the sampling work, what's going on. Then it would be meetings on, for example, I would check with people on allocation of stock, I would check on sales performance, I would, normal meetings that everybody will do. And then the design meetings would happen.
That happens every day?
Every day, yeah. The graphic designers, the product designers, and we'll meet them every day, the marketing people.
Okay, and the evenings?
Evenings I go back, I leave at 7 to 7:15, go home, and every day as a family we have dinner and breakfast together, everyone.
I see.
So
you have your children involved with the business?
One of my children is involved in business, but he's in California right now setting up High Design USA.
Right, okay.
So he's there. Ayesha's, she's making movies, as you know, she's an actress. So then I would go home and we would have dinner, and then we would talk, and then after that I would read and go to sleep.
So you go to sleep pretty early?
Yeah. I go to sleep pretty early. I would say by 10:30 I'm always gone to bed.
And your wife is involved with the hotel business?
She helps in the hotels, but I think she has her own brand, Ayesha, where she's very active, and she has the riding school. She's very passionate about riding. She loves riding horses.
Right.
She has a school where she teaches riding.
Okay.
In Oroville.
Okay. How much of the Oroville influence has come into your work and your life?
I think a lot. I think the design sensibility is very, very influenced by the ashram and Oroville. Because we started off, remember in the ashram school where I was studying, every notebook, and they gave you notebooks in the school, every notebook has on the cover just a small message from the, from the mother, which says there's a great beauty in simplicity.
Yeah.
It's in French, but it means just that. There's a great beauty in simplicity. And I think that still continues to be very important to us. And that's one thing. And I think this whole thing of being not so good in business but being better in design comes also from the ashram. I mean, because your emphasis is more on things that are not finance. I'm pretty bad in finance because I get bored by it.
Okay. So how much of the hippie is left in you?
Probably 15%, 20%.
And when did you transition from being a complete hippie to being a somewhat hippie?
I don't know. I think when I started, certainly one of the big moves was when I made the factory. Because then I knew that I was seriously a businessman, which before that I hated.
So when did your factory start?
1990.
Okay, so that's when you transitioned from being a...
That was a big transition. 78 to 90, I still pretended that I was more a hippie than I was a businessman.
So what did that mean?
What does that mean? I think I changed as a person. I think I found challenges and excitement.
Before that, you said you had long hair, so you cut.
Oh.
That is external.
That's external.
But otherwise, and you continued to ride your bullet.
Yeah, that I still continued. Even when I was here, I was continuing to ride my bullet. Yeah. So that I still do in Oroville. That's the 15% that's still left, maybe.
Yeah. But then, what were the other changes?
Why or what were the changes?
What?
Well, I think beginning to realize that you have responsibilities, that you're not just one individual, that you have to make decisions, that you need to work in a team. You actually need to look at your bank balance. I got cheated twice, completely because I was so stupid with money. I didn't know how to look at a profit and loss account.
Oh,
learning all that.
Okay.
This is where I come in the afternoon for lunch and just a quiet place to sit and think sometimes.
Okay.
And it's quite wild, as you can see. We like it natural and wild. And it's very quiet. You can't imagine that the factory is here.
So you need to tell us about how this started as a hobby. How did you first discover that you were fond of something like this?
When I was finishing my PhD.
Oh.
In America, because I got a job in a leather factory.
I see.
And he was training me. And I spent a year working there.
Okay.
And because
but you still haven't told me how you landed a job like that.
I think I applied to about 20 jobs, and that's the one I got.
Okay.
He liked me.
So you came back from the US after your PhD, and then you came back to?
I came back to be part of Oroville, which was just starting. It was a big experiment in international living. And it was very exciting. I mean, there were people from all over the world collecting there. And so I came back for that, actually. As a hobby, I started making these leather bags. And when I was just making one bag a day, this German buyer came and he gave me an order for 1,400 bags.
How did he discover you?
Through another German who was living in Oroville.
I see.
So, and he loved the bags, and he placed this big order, and it was scary because I was making only one bag a day. So I never, after 7 months, he only got 300 bags from me. But meanwhile, we kept growing. And then people kept coming, and people from all over, somebody would come from Australia, somebody came from America.
So it was primarily word of mouth.
Word of mouth, yeah.
And where did you get the tag hide design?
Hide design. Well, I just kept thinking what we were doing, and I thought what we're doing is design on hides. Hides are leathers. So I just took the two together and combined the two into one word. When I was working in America in this company, they were importing leather from UK, and it used to be always written EI leather. So I wrote to them and I said, what is EI leather? It's beautiful leather. What does EI leather stand for? And they told me it stands for East India leather. And I was really shocked. East India leather. So I said, where does it come from? And they told me it comes from Southeast India, and it was like 100 miles from my home.
Oh.
Okay. And it was considered to be the greatest leather in the world. So, for about 800 years, the world's greatest leather came from this area in Southeast India. It used to be called EI leather. It was a vegetable tanned leather. And the great skill of creating a leather out of vegetable extracts, out of seeds and barks and leaves, people did it a lot, but there were 3 places in the world that were really good. One was in northern Italy, one was out here in South India, and another one was in Brazil, and where they used the local trees to do the tanning.
Okay.
And India's was considered to be the best because our leather was always the brightest, and it was a blonde color. And people made the best shoes in Italy and England, always made out of here.
Okay.
So then when I came back to India, I started looking for this leather. Meanwhile, this vegetable tanning was slowly becoming extinct.
Why was it getting extinct?
Well, because it takes 40 days to do it, whereas the chemical tanning, which is done with chromiums, takes only 7 days, and is cheaper. Okay. So slowly, the whole skill of doing this thing was going away. And I was going around from one tannery to the other, and everybody said, sorry, but we don't do it anymore. We used to do. My father used to do. My grandfather used to do. So then I found people, and I made them go back, and I said, I'll buy the leather, I'll do it, I want it. So we worked together, and we started researching ways to use the same thing, but slowly make it shorter, make it easier.
I see.
And we did. So I think we've been one of the earliest innovators in doing vegetable tanning.
Or rather doing it on a large scale.
Yeah, and using it for fashion. Because people had moved on to chromium salts, and I just didn't like that at all. I've always had this thing about chemicals, and I don't like it. I don't like.
So how would this differ in look from that?
Vegetable tan leather has a lot more body, so it stands better. After 30 years, 40 years, the leather still is really good. Okay. And for shoes especially, it takes, you need good strong leather. And for men's bags, you need very strong leather. And secondly, it's more brilliant. As compared to chemical tan leathers, the color it's got more depth, it goes all the way through, and is very bright, very brilliant. And it's beautiful leather and ages beautifully.
Right. And what made you make bags? Because you just talked about the fact that this leather is very good for making shoes, but you chose to first concentrate on bags.
The place where I worked in America, they made bags. So I knew how to make bags.
Oh,
it's a skill that I had already picked up. So when I came here, I started working with cobblers who knew about leather, but they didn't know how to make bags. So I could teach them. So I could show them how to make a really good bag.
So within 9 months of apprenticeship, you were sort of competent enough to put a bag together?
Well, I was competent enough to start learning how to make a good bag. Okay, so, okay. I mean, you still learn, and you're always learning. But I think I was very curious. What I really liked was the idea of discovering things, and
After a tour of the factory, now Dilip is going to give us an idea about the entrance of the factory. We're going in reverse.
Well, here it is. You're coming in here, straight entrance. This factory was designed by Ray Meeker. Okay. And he made a really beautiful special thing. And every brick that you see here was actually baked from the earth here. And he baked it for me. And so that's why it's so special to us. And that demon that you see there guarding this building here, that's me. And I had a big mustache there and all that. So
this was your hippie days?
That's my hippie days, and that's the demon who guards the place.
Okay.
So here I am guarding our factory.
What I really liked about his design, you said, was that you didn't have more than 80 people in a room. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting facet.
I think that was one of the most important things to us, that everybody gets to know each other, that we continue. It doesn't become mass manufacture. We still wanted that artisan craftsmanship feeling into the work.
So Dilip, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
And many more bags and shoes for the public now.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.